So one of the biggest quarterfinals that could have taken place in the Hong Kong Sevens is going to. New Zealand versus Fiji. Anytime these two sides go head-to-head, it is always entertaining, it is always close, and it can go down to the wire. As you can see here beside me, this was the score in Fiji's last contest. They needed at least 1 point to walk away with a spot in the quarterfinals. They were able to do it, and they did it in emphatic fashion, getting themselves the win over the French, which advances them through to the quarters, where they do take on the Kiwis. But in this preview, we will be looking through at the previous fixtures, the key players to watch out for these two sides, and then at the end, a prediction who we think will get themselves the win. But we will start with Fiji. They were a part of Pool A alongside Australia, Canada, and also the French, who you do see to my side. But 12-0 was the score in their opening contest in favour of the Australians. Not the start to their campaign that Fiji were after. Michael Hooper making his debut for the Sevens in that Australian contest, and of course, getting himself a win under his belt. But then from there, Fiji, it seemed like that game was a little bit of a wake-up call, and up against the Canadians in their nets contest, it was a whole different mindset, it was a whole different performance, and they beat Canada 45 points to 5. So one of the most one-sided games we have seen in Hong Kong so far throughout the tournament, and it was in favour of the Flying Fijians. Then their last game, it was today, of course the first of two, with them advancing through to the quarterfinals, and it was up against the French. They managed to win that game 14 points to 7. Now they had an early lead going into halftime 7-0. Then they allowed France to score pretty early on with Nelson Epi, but then they got back into it, scoring the last minute try, and it was Napoleone Balatha who managed to get them over the line and also with the victory in their favour. Looking through at New Zealand, they've had a pretty consistent kind of Hong Kong Sevens comp. Their first game up against Great Britain, they managed to win it 12 points to 7. Their next game was up against Los Pumas. Now this game up against Argentina, no one predicted the scoreline that we would see here, but it was 22-0 in favour of New Zealand. We're talking about this Argentine side who recently brought up the longest winning streak in Argentinian Sevens history, have now been knocked out and are playing off for 9th place in the Hong Kong Sevens. They lost quite a few group stage fixtures, whereas New Zealand, they did quite the opposite. Their third game was up against the USA, and a little bit similar to that France versus Fiji game. It was extremely close, but New Zealand got themselves the win 12 points to 7. So they actually won 2 of their group stage fixtures, 12 points to 7. Could we see that trend continue here up against Fiji and the quarterfinals? But looking through at the key players. Now, normally we'd look through at the entire competition, but instead here, we're going to look through at the most recent fixtures for these two sides. A couple players who stood up for the Fijians. The try scorers, at least, were Ponipati Loganamasi and also Napoleone Balatha. Now, both men actually did make a few mistakes throughout that game up against France, but the benefit was, even when they were having mistakes, there were still moments where they were getting things right and they were able to get points on the board for the Fijians. Also massive for the Fijians in regards to Felipe Saturanga as well as Waisea Natungu, both getting the kicks over. As these games heading into playoff rugby, it is so important that you are getting every point possible, and that is exactly what the Fijians will want. Then for the New Zealanders, like I mentioned, they had a tough game up against the USA as well. There were 2 try scorers, Tony Nashu and also Xavier Tito Harris. So a couple names completely on the opposite end of their Sevens career. Tony Nashu, he's been around for a long time, has a huge amount of experience under his belt. He's been missing for a while due to an injury. Now back on the Sevens circuit, looks like he's picking up exactly from where he left off. And then Xavier Tito Harris, one of the younger players in this New Zealand setup. But he is not the only young guy in this side that have got potential. The same can be said about the Flying Fijians. But now we are up to that stage of the video where we give a prediction. Now both of these sides received a yellow card in their last performances, and that will be a little bit concerning, only because discipline can be so crucial in a game of sevens, definitely when you get into playoff rugby and how close the games normally are between these two sides. I'll be honest, I feel like Fiji, even though they look really good in that game up against Canada, even though they beat France, I still feel like they haven't quite found their rhythm yet. in the Hong Kong Sevens competition. Now, that is not to say that they won't go far in the comp, but I just feel like going up against New Zealand here, there are a lot of other sides that the Fijians would have rather faced at this point. And also, I should mention, whoever wins this game goes on to face the winner of Australia versus South Africa. So it doesn't exactly get any easier from here on out. So whoever wins this game and whoever wins that game between South Africa and Australia, the winner of that semi-final definitely has done enough to deserve to walk away as Hong Kong Sevens champions. In this game, normally when I back a side to win, they lose. So at this point, I don't even know if it's reverse psychology anymore or I'm just terrible at predictions. I think I know which one it is though. Probably the second. I'm going to say New Zealand win this game up against the Fijians. And to keep the trend rolling, I'm going to say they win it 12 points to 7. That would be their third out of 4 games to have that exact scoreline of 12 to 7. So let's see whether or not that will be the case. But I'm actually going to make an even bolder prediction and say that New Zealand are down by 7 at half time and go on to score their 2 tries in the second half. But I do thank you all very much for tuning into this preview. This game is going to be taking place at 11:24 p.m. New Zealand time. We will be live on the channel doing the commentary. So if you are new, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Also, let me know who you think will win this game. I'm sure your predictions will be much better than mine, as I've just followed pretty much what has happened in New Zealand's other games. I think Fiji, though, they have more than enough of a shot of being able to get themselves a win here. But thank you all very much for tuning in, and I will see you all for the next one.